AskReddit by a cheap page. What ruined religion for you? Being raised in a Mormon, LDS, church and forced to attend every boring meeting and gathering for 18 years. Even as a young teenager I somehow saw through the coercion tactics. Giving me assignments because God wanted me to do it when really it was the old white men that saw I didn't want to be there and thought giving me an assignment would help. Or, at testimony meetings every month. You're supposed to speak from your heart about your belief to the congregation. Toddlers would be forced to go up and their mothers would whisper in their ear what to say and they would repeat it. I thought this was insane because obviously they're not speaking their own words. I could go on. So many things, but the final straw for me was my church asking a homeless man to leave and not come back. He would sit and listen to the sermons, never bothered anyone and always sat in the very back. I confronted my youth group leader and she defended the preacher. I hear stuff like this all the time and it's so infuriating. Like, what the fuck? Doesn't the Bible, doesn't your God, teach you to be kind and loving and selfless, to love people no matter what? I've only ever met one church leader, pastor, whatever in my entire life who lived by those teachings. I met him when I had already separated from religion, but he was truly a man of God if there ever was one. He was what Christianity should look like. He loved everyone, every single person, equally and unequivocally. His church was always open to everyone from all walks of life. He fed anyone who was hungry, would literally give you the clothes off his back if you needed them, offered wisdom and guidance and counseling services, never tried to push religion on you, just made you feel loved and accepted no matter what. His church was a haven to the homeless. He ran breakfasts every Saturday, cooked huge meals all the time, had gatherings on holidays, and let the homeless use the church for recreation, shelter, food, water, amenities. I don't think I'd have such of an issue with Christianity as a practice if more Christians were like him. At the hospital with my family sitting around my terminally ill aunt, a reverend was called in to say a prayer and do whatever the pre-death ritual was. The man arrived and waited outside the room a bit, not coming in. My cousin and I made eye contact with him and my cousin asked if he would come in. The man made an odd face and then rubbed his fingers together making the money gesture. Whatever little bit of faith I still had whooshed away at that moment. That's pretty abhorrent. When I was sexually assaulted by another boy and I spoke to my pastor because I was afraid to tell my family. He asked me what I did to make the other kid have impure thoughts and tried to make it out to be my fault. That was the exact moment I lost what little faith I had to begin with. I was surprised to have to scroll this far to find the weird sex stuff. Mine was a child molester that was a youth group volunteer. He molested several children, all boys. And the church decided that they wouldn't do anything except say he couldn't work with kids anymore. I distinctly remember them talking about it during a service, and I looked back at the guy sitting in the pews and he was smirking. Fucking disgust is all I feel when someone talks about their religion. This 13-year-old kid got exposed for being gay and was bullied into suicide by his family for it. I remember during summers they would send him to a special camp to cure his gayness. I was really good friends with his little sister and she would always say how embarrassing it was to have a gay brother and would hope he would become straight. He ended up hanging himself at 13 or 14. It happened in middle school and I can't pretend like I was friends with him, but his story always stuck with me. What did the family think? Well, being from Northern Ireland I have more than the average number of reasons. I guess it's a toss-up between learning that the clergy on both sides had been diddling kids, including selling access to them to rich pedophiles. Learning that the Catholic Church ran women's homes where they kidnapped babies, sold the ones that didn't die and used their mothers as forced labor. Or the classic, that we had a civil war that was largely delineated on religious lines, so people spent 40 years telling their children that the other half were basically scary aliens that meant us harm. Oh yeah, and I liked dinosaurs and the church people kept telling me they weren't real, so fuck that. I love the fact that along with all of the horrible troubles that NI has to deal with, the nail in the coffin for you, as the dean knows. how agonizingly long and tedious mass was as a Roman Catholic kid. Stand up, sing. Sit down. Then kneel. Then stand again. Sing again. Sit down. Stand up. Kneel and pray. Then 30 minutes of droning from the robed guy at the front. Then stand up and sing. Sit down. Stand up. WTF, please make this end. When I was 12, my father pulled me aside and said, son, you are old enough to decide about religion. I wanted to give you a chance to experience religion. If you want to keep going to church, you can. But it's also okay if you don't want to go anymore. I said, okay, I don't want to go anymore. My father said, okay, me too. And that was that. Your dad seemed like an amazing guy. Props to him. I wish my parents were as accepting as that. Deleted. The worst part about this is that they never suspect the child to be autistic. Really toxic people at my church growing up. Seeing people only go to church to make connections and gossip rather than actually worship and do good for others. I knew so many people growing up who called themselves Christian but didn't actually read, let alone follow the Bible. They just cherry-picked a few quotes that appeared to justify whatever they wanted to do. When I was in youth group, I asked the leader if it's okay to kill in war. And he said it is, and God understands that it is sometimes necessary in life to go to war. I then asked what if there is war for the wrong reasons. And he said war is pretty much always in the right, and God understands that it's different than just normal killing. I was 13 and was flabbergasted at how insane that sounded. Seeing how people use religion as an excuse to be shitty people around the world. So many people just bend their interpretation of religion to fit whatever they want. If I have to boil my experience down to a simple concept, it's this. There's much more nuance, but overall you're using a book that will give you a passage to justify whatever you want to do. Religious leaders ruined religion for me. I never met a single priest who could tell me about heaven, but they all knew every square inch of hell. They built it. When I was 6 years old, the pastor gave a letter to my aunt to give to my mom saying that we were not donating enough money to the church. So we stopped going, and I have never been to church since. Something like this happened to my friend's grandma. The church wrote her a letter basically saying they knew how much money she was making and that she should be giving more to the church. Her response was, "Screw you guys, I'm moving to Mexico." Going to a mega church. They received over 1 million donations every weekend and spent it on elaborate props and videos rather than helping the community in any meaningful way. I was taken to a mega church once for a Christmas thing, and the very first thing I saw upon entering was a life-size bronze statue of the pastor. All I could think was, isn't this a false idol? The non-answers to all my questions as a kid. You just have to have faith is a dumb way to respond to an inquisitive mind. When I was a kid, I asked my grandmother where God came from and she smacked me across the face and said, "We don't ask questions like that." I was just being honestly curious because I wanted to understand, and her reaction shocked me. That's where it all started for me. There was never an answer. I wanted to believe desperately. I wanted to, and I begged God to allow me to be doubtless. I tried and tried and tried to make it work. To make it fit. I asked questions. I wondered. I pondered. I just got to a point where there were no more answers. No one had an answer that made sense. Nothing that the next person couldn't alter or contradict. Nothing that was set or fixed, it was all up in the air, and I just needed more faith. I tried. I really did. But my mind just won't allow it anymore. This is kind of how I felt. Like I believed in God, but it never felt natural to fully conform to the whole faith. The only part that made sense, sometimes, was the idea of a caring creator. But eventually all the other things became too hard to fight and I just gave up. Realized that my remaining faith was mostly based on fear of hell, not having a God that has my back. This process took years, of course. I worked at a restaurant near a church on Sundays. Rudest bunch of people ever. Edit. Thank you for the likes and awards. Some people believe that being religious makes them better than non-religious. When I left the church I was persona non grata. None of the members will even look at me now. Oh well. Catholic high school is very popular in the area that I am from. No one wants to send their kids to the public schools around here. Every single one of my friends who I am still in touch with that went to school with me are now the biggest non-believers I know. My mother telling me Santa wasn't real by saying, do you really believe that there is a magic man that files to all the houses worldwide in one night on a sleigh? I had always been skeptical anyways, but that solidified it. I then wondered at what age she would tell me God isn't real. I remember being told that dinosaurs weren't real. Being told I was going to rot in hell every time I made a simple mistake. The intolerance between different religions, it's harmful to society. It literally causes wars to break out, it's insane. I went to a Catholic high school in northern Illinois in the late 90s. My family never attended church in all my life. Mom was lapsed Catholic, dad was Jewish Unitarian undecided. For whatever reasons, they felt this was a better option than the public high schools. We had to do 20 hours of volunteer service work, ACA ministry, each semester, 40 hours per school year x 4 years. I did mine at the animal shelter. I became very concerned about animal and human rights. We even founded an animal rights club at the school. I was also in Amnesty International. I cannot describe in mere words how much the experience at the shelter changed my life during those formative years. My final semester of senior year, my monstrous religion teacher decreed that none of the hours I had done since my first day as a freshman counted, because, and these words came directly from his asshole mouth, animals don't have souls. Thank goodness we had some amazing nuns who stood up for me and I was able to graduate. Fuck you Mr. Lepek. Love you Sister Pole. Lol, I was just going to say, was this Lepek? Went to the same school. He was a dick. Service hours were a bunch of BS. The hypocrisy and irony. Some religious people are the most corrupt individual there is. Being told that being sexually abused as a child was a good thing as God needed to teach me a lesson on hubris and ego. I should accept it as a lesson and be better so I wouldn't fall into the clutches of the devil. I was 7. Apparently I was asking for it. Hugs to you. My mother blamed me for my sexual assault, so I've been there. The expectations for women to be subservient to men and have no further aspirations than wife and mother. It quickly became evident that many people who call themselves religious only do so to feel morally superior to others around them, and then use that superiority to try to control everything they can. I like to say that Jesus was a carpenter who gave his followers a hammer to build with. They took the hammer and started hitting other people with it. Its followers. I like your Christ, I do not like your Christians. Your Christians are so unlike your Christ. Mahatma Gandhi. Sermons alternated between asking for money, telling us LGBT people were bad, or telling us we were all worthless sinners without God. Left church every Sunday feeling like shit. One week, I just decided I'm not going back. I don't miss it. It reminds me of that church that was telling people to donate their stimulus checks to the church. People were literally starving to death and these bastards wanted their last pennies. The fact that there are multiple, but I was taught that only one is correct. Exactly. There have been 10,000 plus religions throughout time and the right one is whichever one you belong to. Seems so ridiculous. Also, the lengths religions have gone to over the years to convert or destroy outside communities doesn't seem too in line with being a decent human. The idea that you're created by an omniscient God, and they give you free will, But with chastise you for using that exact free will is kinda bullshit. It's even worse because he created the universe knowing exactly how things would play out. He created you the way you are knowing you do things he doesn't like and he'd get an excuse to punish you for them.